So this procedure shows you how to simulate a program using the Haas controller. You may have to turn the controller on to start. If it's off, hit the green button on the top left hand corner, and the machine will ask you whether you want to simulate a mill or lathe. Input M on the alphanumeric keypad to indicate mill, and then the Haas control screen should come up. It'll take a few minutes before you'll see anything on it. The first thing you'll see that there's a red flashing alarm at the bottom of the screen. To get rid of that, you would come down to the reset button and hit it a couple of times. And then it says no alarm. You also want to tell the machine to go home, or the controller to go home, and if you go down to the reset button right next to it, there is a power up restart button which does this. So hit this button, and then if you look at the screen, you'll see that the machine is zeroing off. Even though it's not really connected to any hardware, any physical motors, it is still doing a simulated home move to get the controller into default condition. So here we are. What you're seeing right now is the memory screen. To simulate a program, let's assume that you have the program already loaded into memory. First thing you will do is you will make sure that that program is current. To do this, you'll go down to the modes part of the control panel, and then at the bottom there's the list program mode. What you're going to do is hit that. That displays a list on the screen. So there's the list of programs that you have. And we want to go ahead and simulate program 00500. So using the cursor pad in the middle of the control panel, you want to move the cursor down. Excuse me, let me just clear this. Let's go back to list programs again. Want to make sure, let me back up a little bit. You notice that there are two panes here. It's part of the display window. Make sure that this is on memory. So if this pops down to USB device, scroll up to memory. And then you want to make the pane on the right active. You notice that there's a green border around this indicating that the left pane is active. You want to use the right cursor key to make the right pane active, and you can see it's green there now. Now you can use the cursor button, the down cursor button, to scroll down to the program you want to simulate. So we're going to go down all the way to number 5, or 000500. And we're going to select this program, so we need to go back to the keypad, and there's a select program button here next to the list program. Select, and then if you go back to the screen, you'll see that the asterisk is next to that program, so that means that that's now the current program in memory. To simulate, you want to come down to the modes buttons again and go into memory mode, which is here. And if you go back up to the screen, you'll see that the program that you selected is now listed. This is not a great screen to run from. You want to be able to see graphically the tool moving, so you want to come down to the display modes and the setting graph button here. You want to hit this a couple of times, and you'll see that the screen switches over to show a graphical display of what would be your work envelope looking down from the positive Z direction. If you look at the top of the screen, there are a couple of buttons there, the F keys and what they do. You'd probably want to display the position of the tool as you're running the program, as well as display a few lines of code. So F3 will display the position, F4 will display some lines of code as you're simulating it. So let's go down to the function buttons. So F3 does position, and you have to hit this a couple of times to get the display to show G54 coordinates, which is what you want. Then the F4 button will display a few lines of code at the bottom of the screen. So going back up to the screen, now you'll see that there's this window over here which displays your G54 coordinates, and then there are a couple of lines of code down at the bottom right hand corner of the window that one can see as one simulates the program. So we're ready to simulate. What I'm going to do is just hit the cycle start button, which is the bottom button on the left side, the cycle start button here. So I'm going to move back up to the screen to show you what happens when I do this. There may be an alarm if the the controller hasn't been used before. Actually, in this case, it's fine because we did start it up earlier. You can see that the tool moves into position. The program scrolls down to the line. There is an M00, which is a stop. And it's telling you to put your stock in. So on a real machine, you'd open the door, put your stock in, move it against the dowel pin, and close the part, lock the part into the vise. I'm going to go ahead and hit the cycle start button again to get the program running through the rest of the code. You can also go to single block mode, which allows you to execute one line at a time, and that's down here on the memory modes. There is right next to it what's called single block. So instead of the program running all the way through, it will execute one block at a time every time you hit the green button. Let's just quickly look at this before I run through the rest of the program. So I'm going to click on this and go back up to the main screen, and I'm going to hit the cycle start button a couple of times, and you can see that the tool went home. It's probably doing a tool change, comes back in, and then it starts doing some machining. So that move here on the right is a cutting move. It's a solid line. It lifts up and then rapids across to the other side. Does another cutting move. Then it goes home, loads up a facing cutter here to do a chamfer, and then the cutter moves along the top of the part, down the left side, across the bottom, and back up the right side. And that's all this program does. So it goes home and the program terminates. You can see the M30 there coming up. So that was the program executed one step at a time. If I wanted to run it through completely without having to press the cycle start button over and over, I would just come down here and of course go off single block mode and hit the green button. If you want to zoom in and zoom out of your display, if you look at the top again, F2 does zooming, and when you hit F2, you notice that there is a window that appears here that kind of shows you the current size. If you hit the page up button, the page down button, you can actually see that you're cropping the window. So you're actually zooming in. If you hit page up, out, you're actually zooming out. And then if you hit the left and right key, you can see that the window pans over to the left or right. So you can go ahead and zoom in and zoom out if you're very far away from your work. And then once you've got the correct zoom, if you look at the top again, it says to write the current zoom settings. You have to hit the right button, which is the bottom of the numeric keypad down here, right enter, and it accepts the new coordinates. It also erases your previously displayed toolpath, so you pretty much have to simulate again. So that in a nutshell is how you would load up a program, or not load a program, select a program and then simulate it using the Haas controller that we have in 262 and also down here in the CNC lab.